from the Gospel of Luke. Then Jesus said to them, "Suppose one of you went to your friend's house at midnight and said to him, 'Friend, loan me 3 loaves of bread. A friend of mine has come into town to visit me, but I have nothing for him to eat.' Your friend inside the house answers, 'Don't bother me. The door is already locked and my children and I are in bed. I cannot get up and give you anything.' I tell you, if friendship is not enough to make him get up to give you the bread, your boldness will make him get up and give you whatever you need. So I tell you, ask and God will give to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will open for you. Yes, everyone who asks will receive, the one who searches will find, and everyone who knocks will have the door opened." Amen. I am a teller of transformative stories in a changing world. That is my provocative purpose statement. It was a statement that I developed over some time, over a lengthy period of reflection and thoughtfulness. It is a statement that came to me as I considered my best gifts, and what it was that I really felt that I was called to do, called to be as a servant of Christ. I am a teller of transformative stories in a changing world. A number of years ago, when I was thinking about doing my doctorate, I had to start considering just what I wanted to do it in. There's a host of Doctor of Ministry programs that are offered out in the world, and they cover all kinds of topics, everything from pastoral care to church growth to family systems theory to administration of church events and all of that sort of stuff. Just tons and tons, pretty much anything that you would desire. And I spent a great deal of time, a couple of years when I was considering doing my doctorate, in thinking about what I needed to build upon. What in my life was I weak in that I needed to be better at? Did I need to improve? And so I started thinking about this, and I started to think about the fact that, I'm not too bad at pastoral care, but it's something that I really have to work at. It doesn't come naturally to me. And I have a friend, her name is Gwen, and Gwen is one of those wonderfully embracing, compassionate people that as soon as you are in her presence, you immediately feel loved and cared for. You immediately feel like all of her attention is focused on you and on your well-being. Gwen is a marvelous pastoral care minister. And she does it so naturally and so easily. And whenever I would look at her, I would always say to myself, why am I not like her? Why don't I have that same ability? Whenever I do pastoral care, I always find it to be an exhausting experience. I will come and I can visit with people and I can spend time with them and sharing in their stories and hear the concerns that they have. But if I do that over a couple of days or a few weeks at a time, I end up exhausted. And I have to take time to just recover. And usually my recovery time consists of locking myself in my room with good books and reading good books or playing on my tablet or something like that, just to regain some energy, because I am a very strong I introvert. And so I gain my energy from being on my own. And so it's very difficult for me. And so when I started thinking about the Doctor of Ministry program, the one thing that I thought about was, I should do one on pastoral care so that I can learn to do it better. So I'll be more effective at doing pastoral care as a minister. And I started looking around and seeing the programs that were available, seeing what was offered. And to tell you the truth, as I was looking at all of these programs, none of them excited me. None of them inspired me. Now, it's not because they weren't good programs. They were all well-respected programs at well-respected universities. So it wasn't a case that I was, going to Joe's Garage and Pastoral Care Center. It really was a case that I was looking at meaningful educational institutions that offered excellent programs. But whenever I looked at pastoral care doctorates, I just started reading down the list of the books that you had to read, and I read down the lists of the courses that you had to take, and the more I read and the more I examined it, the less enthused I became. And it was a case, it took quite a while actually for me to reach the place where I realized that if I was to go and participate in a doctoral program for something that I considered to be a weakness or even a failing of mine, that I would not do very well at it. I would spend so much time focused on technique, so much time focused on philosophy around what it means to be a good pastoral caregiver, so much time around the style of pastoral care, or so much around the process of pastoral care, that I would miss out on what it means to be gifted in pastoral care. Now, if Gwen were to call me up and to ask me what doctoral program she should go into, I would say right away, you should go into a pastoral care program. Because you are so good at it that you want to be even better. You are so good at pastoral care, you should be involved in a program that is focused on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. And so that got me thinking, what in ministry am I strong in? What in ministry do I consider to be my best strength, my best gift? And I mean, this may come across as a little arrogant, I don't know, but I think preaching is my best gift. And so I decided that I would take a course in preaching. When I looked up the preaching programs that were available, I found a number of them as well, but the one that really excited me was the one offered by McCormick Seminary out of the University of Chicago. And it was exciting because as I read down the list of books that were available that they wanted you to focus on, as I read over the courses that we would be involved in, I found myself feeling excited and energized. And so I knew that was the program that I wanted to be a part of. And so that's what I did. I went and I took my doctorate in preaching through the Association of Chicago Theological Schools. And in 3 years' time, I graduated with my Doctor of Ministry in preaching, and it was one of the best things that I ever did. And the reason that I found it so exciting and so invigorating was because I really felt from the first day that I was in my element. I was learning. It wasn't a case that I went in there going, I know all of this stuff, it's going to be a cakewalk. It wasn't. But it was a case that I went in there, I was learning exciting stuff, it was very interesting to be exposed to new insights and new understandings, to get challenged in the way that I preached, and challenged in being better at what I did well. And I loved the books. I read one book in there that really stunk. But the rest of them were all really, really good. And every year that was repeated. You would have another 20, 25 books that you had to read. Until finally the preaching shelf on my bookshelf in my office extended into the pastoral care shelf. And those books in pastoral care all got boxed away and shoved into the corner, and the preaching shelf went on and on and on. I did what was best. I focused on what I did best in order to make it better. When I started thinking about doing interim ministry, the first program that I went into or signed up for was through the Interim Ministry Network. And when we sat down with the first day of class for the Interim Ministry Network, they started talking about the fact that interim ministers were problem solvers. That we would be going into congregations that would be dealing with issues, dealing with problems, dealing with their failures and their mistakes, and you were trying to heal them, trying to make them better, trying to help them get over their wounds and their brokenness. Something about that struck me as wrong right from the start. The idea that you would go into a church that was already wounded and say, let's take a stick and poke at the wound. Let's take a stick and open things up so that the bad feelings that you have had for the last however many years you've been dealing with it really are out there in front of you all of the time. And once we've made you feel worse, once we've made you feel truly that you have failed, then we'll start to rebuild things and maybe move you towards what is better. I lasted a day and a half in that program. I remember actually at the end of the first day, in fact it was lunch on the first day, that I went to the instructor and said, this is not the course for me. And she said, oh, you should stay around because this afternoon and tomorrow morning we're dealing with really good stuff about this and this and this. Okay, fine. So I stayed for the afternoon. I wasn't any more convinced. Came back the next morning, and the same thing started all over again. That was a little bit different, but it was still based on the idea of we're not doing very well, we're failing, let's go in and confront those failures. And so I left at the coffee break. And I didn't regret it a bit. That's when I found appreciative inquiry and the interim ministry program that was offered through that. And the reason I liked the appreciative inquiry program was because it didn't say, let's go in and look at the congregation's wounds. Let's go in and examine where they failed and where they've made mistakes and where they've let themselves down and where they think they've let God down and all of that stuff. Instead, what they did was they said, let's go in and ask them, what do you really love about your church? What do you do as a congregation that is best? What about your church is life-giving? It doesn't matter what the past is. It doesn't matter the mistakes that maybe have been made, the shortcomings, the failings, the wounds that have happened. What matters is, what do you love? What is best about who you are? There's a story about a psychologist who was treating a young boy about 6 or 7 years old because he had a paralyzing fear of dogs. And this fear was so great that the child refused to go outside. He was unable to create social relationships with his friends. He wasn't able to go to school, all because he was so terrified that he would meet a dog. If he was walking down the street with his parents and a dog was coming the other way on a leash with the owner or something like that, the parents would have to take the child, physically lift him up because he would be paralyzed from the fear he was feeling, and carry him away from the scene. When the psychologist was finally meeting with this child after the parents had basically, exhausted all other avenues, he didn't ask, why is the child like this? Where did this fear come from? What happened in his past life that has led to this crisis of confidence, to this paranoia and paralysis that he is dealing with? Instead, what the psychologist did, and this was in the very first meeting, what the psychologist did was he said, we're going to go to the SPCA tomorrow, and you don't have to worry, I will be with you the entire way. You will be safe. All of the dogs will be behind cages, so you don't have to worry about them getting. And he did everything he could to help the child feel calm. And he said, and when we get to the SPCA, you're going to find a puppy who is as terrified as you are. And you're going to take that puppy home and take care of him. The reason the psychologist did that was because he knew from the parents that this child was, for all of his anxieties around dogs, was incredibly empathetic. He was a very compassionate child. He cared deeply about others who were hurting. And so instead of worrying about what had happened in the past to make him this way, the psychologist simply refocused his energies into what the child did best. When we gathered together as a congregation and talked about the vision for Shakespeare Church, when we talked about what type of congregation we are, we didn't talk about where we failed and where we've fallen short or what we need to improve upon. Instead, we talked about what it is that we love to do, what it is that we are best at. Where do we feel the greatest sense of empowerment? Where do we feel Christ most intimately connected to us? Where do we feel the Spirit of God working within us? And over the sessions that we participated in, the one term that kept coming up again and again and again was relationship. And at the last main visioning event on November 3rd, that was what you identified. That you are a congregation of relationship. Now, there may be things that you need to improve upon. There may be areas where you aren't the best. And we could spend an awful lot of energy focusing in those areas. Or we could focus on what you already do well and help you to do it better. And so when you got together and talked about your future, it was not unexpected that the primary goals that you identified, the primary ideas that you came up with, all focused around relationship. If you remember the document that I sent out a couple of weeks ago, there were 9 elements that were chosen as the primary vision ideas of the congregation. And of those 9 elements, 8 of them were directly related to relationship. That is impressive, really. And that's a reminder to you that that is what you are best at. That is where your passion lies, where your energy is. And so that's what we're going to continue to nurture and build upon. And so when we go downstairs at the end of today to talk about your provocative purpose statement, I want you to focus on that. To focus on what it is that you love to do as a church. What it is you believe is the very best about you. And find a way to put that into a phrase, into a statement that is inspiring, affirming, life-giving, challenging, hopeful, and brief. And see just what it is that we can discover together. I am a teller of transformative stories within a changing world. My provocative purpose statement talks about what it is that I do best. What it is that I love to do. What it is that I am doing now and into the future. It's not I will strive to be a teller of transformative stories, or I think I am a teller of transformative stories. It is I am. I am a teller of transformative stories within a changing world. And my prayer for you is that when we are finished today, you will have a sense, an idea of what such a statement might mean for you, might be for you. What are you best at? What do you truly love to do? What does it mean to you to be Shakespeare Presbyterian Church? I'm excited by the chance we have to discover that answer together.